On this week with JMO, with Josh and Joe, I know what you're thinking right now, but don't adjust your audio settings because this is Joe that's talking and not Josh. And that is due to a absence with Josh this episode, so you get to listen to me because Josh is quote-unquote feeling like ass. But I talk with you about college football week 11. We go through, obviously, start off with the LSU game, and I make my case for a strong stance that I have. Next, we move on to Oregon USC, how Oregon's kind of a well-oiled machine right now. Texas A&M, Mississippi State, which we are dubbing the fired coach game, or fired coaches game. Talk about the dominance of Georgia, how Washington continues. Moving on to Missouri and how Eli Drinkwitz's top name in the league right now. Michigan, Penn State, even with the absence of Jim Harbaugh, they do move on. And other follow-up games with the college football. And then we move on to NFL Week 10, where not a great slate of games, but we did see some matchups that we will touch up on. A little bit of a somber note on the Saints front. Vikings just kind of seem to have our number. And then lastly, we touch up on some NBA. So let's get right to it. All right, let's rock and roll. Welcome to JMO with Josh and Joe. Today is Wednesday, November 15th, and yes, I know what you're thinking. It's a different voice than the normal introduction that you typically get, and that's right. Today I'll be doing the podcast by myself, giving you a roundup of all the sporting news. Josh is, as I quote, feels like ass tonight. So he will not be participating due to an illness. Probably could have been a prime opportunity for him to have a Jordan-like performance on this podcast. But we'll have to discuss about that later and, try to get him on the show next time. But yes, feels like ass. I'm going to try to do the show by myself. It's going to be quite a challenge, especially since I'm not the lead host, typically. I'm usually kind of more the fill-in guy, and we both bounce ideas off of each other, yada, 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 kind of the same spiel he used to say, or he said earlier this season whenever he did it by himself. But here we are. This is actually how the show kind of originated, so for all the new listeners out there, we actually started by Josh doing recaps of our fantasy football league. Kind of typically what we do, now alongside this podcast episode each week. He was actually doing that to start it off and doing it by himself. And we just ran on. And honestly, I think it started for like 15 minutes. And then he went to like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and like an hour. And we found out that real quick that both he and I can just talk sports all day long, just like pretty much everybody, You just want to talk sports. So, anyways, I digress. Let's get to the sports news. We will cover some college football and NFL. As we start off, we always start off with the college football. And Week 11 brought us, quite a bit of failed two-point conversions that were kind of key in a lot of these matchups. So let's start off like we always do. LSU versus Florida. LSU gets the victory 52-35. And this is going to be my spiel, and I'm actually going to kind of do this on a lot of matchups, is I'm going to kind of maybe do a storyline other than the actual game. Because you get to that point where you start talking about the game, but later on in the season, there's other storylines that come into play, and with the other matchups, we'll get to those. But for this one, it's JD5 for Heisman, and this is going to be my spiel. So ESPN did a wonderful job of putting on the broadcast of the three Heisman winners that have won the Heisman with three losses. Because as you all may know, Heisman winners typically were the ones from the best player from the best team. It kind of sucked. It kind of sucked. What was it? 2003, Jason White won the award because he was the quarterback of Oklahoma, who was the number one team, and then got stomped by LSU in the national championship game. But really was not the greatest player in the country. You could probably said Eli Manning was at that time. He went off that year. I don't think LSU would have had somebody that was maybe a Heisman candidate, but there was a couple other players that were worthy candidates. And Jason White, while he did have a prolific college career, didn't really have a good NFL career, and the rest is history on that. But so back to ESPN's prompt, three Heisman winners with their teams having three losses: Lamar Jackson, RG3, and Tim Tebow. And honestly, those were just kind of recent memory. I would have to take a look back at all the Heisman winners to see if that was the case for all of them. But yeah, those really kind of did change the actual way we looked at the Heisman. It actually started really turning the tide about actually choosing the best player rather than just the best player on the best team. And Lamar Jackson was really, really key on this because everybody and their grandmothers knew that Lamar Jackson was the most explosive, most dynamic quarterback out there on that year in 2016 when he won it. And, it just like when him winning the award, we didn't even think anything of it. We just thought, you know what, he was most deserving. And that's my case for JD5. Because during this Florida game, he did something that was unprecedented that no football player had ever done, was throw for 300 yards and rush for 300 or 200 yards as well. His stats were unbelievable. 17 of 26, 372 yards, 3 touchdowns. His rushing stats were 12 carries, 234 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Unbelievable. And if you're looking for that like Heisman moment, he definitely had it in this game with his 85-yard scamper. I don't think I've seen since Lamar Jackson a quarterback with the wheels that just completely take off the entire defense. I mean, he ran that thing from the line of scrimmage 85 yards, and he outran the entire defense. It was incredible. So I think this was his... Yeah, I mean, it was a thing of beauty. I think this was his Heisman game. He's got Georgia State and he's got Texas A&M, who just fired their coach. We'll get to that later. He's definitely the most dynamic player in the league. You take Jaden Daniels off of LSU's offense, they are not the best offense in the league. They might be a pretty good offense. Obviously, Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. are definitely pretty good, but they complement each other in both ways. The receivers complement Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels actually really complements the receivers in a way because he's such a rushing threat that the defense always has to account for that. I did pull up the stats for Lamar Jackson and JD5. Basically, pretty similar. The only thing that's probably a knock on Jaden Daniels is that he's maybe not as explosive as a runner, which is a lot of times what the Heisman pollers kind of want to see. They want to see if you're going to be labeled as a dual threat quarterback, you got to have like really dual threat numbers. And Lamar, 20 of 30, 409, 3,543 yards, 30 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. Passer rating 148.8. Now his rushing yards is what's the difference makers here. 1,500 yards, 1,571 to be exact. Six yard per average, 21 touchdowns. That's the big kicker right there. Is you'll have to probably focus on that number, is the 21 touchdowns. Now, to date, JD5 is 195 of 273. That's a 71% for everybody keeping track on that one. much better passer completion percentage than Lamar Jackson. He's got 3,164 yards. He's going to surpass Lamar Jackson easily. 30 touchdowns already ties him. 4 interceptions. I don't really see, knock on wood, wherever wood is, but I don't see him surpassing, 9 interceptions there. That's a 202.1 QB rating, and that's ratings according to Football Reference. And this is probably the differentiator. So whereas Lamar Jackson had over 1,500 yards, Jaden Daniels has 918 yards, 8 touchdowns, but he does have an 8.1 average per rush. So that puts in a little bit of perspective. Jaden Daniels, definitely a better passer. Lamar, definitely a better runner. Still amazing stats. And then if you have to put comparatively to Bo Nix and Michael Penix, Jaden Daniels' stats blows him out the water. So that's my case. I rest my case for Jaden Daniels for Heisman. But other than that, typical LSU game this week, this year, all offense, no defense. Let Florida, Graham Mertz look like an actual Heisman winner. It's terrible. We got to get something going on defense. But anyways, you got anything else on that? Oh, no one's around? All right, cool. Let's go to the next game. All right, next game, Oregon versus USC. Oregon 36, USC 27. Kind of typical fashion on what we've been seeing with USC. The question I have to bring, is USC contemplating a coaching change? As we will see, and have we already seen, is that there has been quite a bit of coaching changes going on right now. This seems to be the prime time to do it. I'm guessing because of the early signing period. Now that they got the early signing period moved up to December, I'd have to imagine that's what's making and influencing these decisions on the coaches, which kind of sucks because, it's basically teams just giving up in the middle of the year. But whatever. So, I don't know. I'm going to pose that out there. Let me know what you think. And the other thing I had on this one, Caleb Williams, stock dropping. Not a very good game. I believe he had like 213 yards, 1 touchdown. I don't know. Maybe his NFL stock's dropping a little bit. I highly doubt it. But if it's a lack of motivation, that's a little bit concerning. That's a character issue. If it's defense is figuring him out, that's also an issue. I have no doubt in my mind, if I'm putting money down, I'm going to put money down on Caleb Williams being the number 1 pick. I guess it does kind of depend on who is the number 1 pick, though, too. Because if the Bears have it, I don't see them going quarterback. If Justin Fields finish off the year really well. He's a talent, too. Honestly, I think they're both as talented as each other, Justin Fields and Caleb Williams. Maybe controversial. I don't know. Yell at me. But talent for talent, I think they're the same. I think Caleb Williams is definitely more refined as a passer than Justin Fields is. But as far as doing the kind of like circus act each play, where it's unscripted type of stuff, they kind of do the same thing. Anyways, that's my spiel on that. Let's move on to Oregon. Oregon is a well-oiled machine right now. Really are impressing everybody as far as want to be in one of the best teams in the nation, along with Georgia. And I'm just kind of looking forward to a rematch with Washington in the Pac-12 championship. So the Pac-12 got rid of their divisions, so they're just going off the top 2 teams. Kind of a little standard that a lot of teams or some conferences are doing, the ACC are doing. But for the last season of the Pac-12 since it's dying, farewell. That looks like it's going to be a rematch of Washington and Oregon in the Pac-12. Very much would look forward to that. So we'll see. We'll see. Moving on, Texas A&M beats Mississippi State 51-10, and that was enough to fire Jimbo Fisher. Oddly enough, right? It's weird. College football is weird, but no, it definitely felt like it was a ride into the sunset type of game. After Captain Hindsight is all said and done, we figured out that actually Jimbo Fisher was getting fired the next day, but he had a meeting on Thursday discussing this. It almost appeared as if like Jimbo Fisher used that as a pregame speech, right? Like, come on. If he knew he was getting fired already, they were bragging about the donation, the $160 million donation to the 12-man group. The boosters had collectively donated. I have no doubt in my mind Jimbo had that in his head, and he also used it in a pregame speech. Like, hey guys, I'm leaving the team. I want you to hear from me first. The news will probably break sometime next week. Let's ride this one out. And sure enough, that led to a 51-10 game, which probably could be dubbed the fired coach game, because also Zach Arnett got fired as well after this game, and I feel for Zach Arnett. I don't feel for Jimbo. I don't feel for him. I mean, the guy got paid. You have to perform to pay. You can't be the exact same as your predecessor with that type of salary. Anyways, I digress. But Zach Arnett, he just got landed, obviously, in a shitty situation. Mike Leach, rest in peace. You know, he passes away unexpectedly in the offseason. Obviously, is way too late to actually try to do a coaching search process, so they go with Zach Arnett. It's a tough situation to handle. I mean, you already are against the odds coaching at a place like Mississippi State. But to actually come in with a completely different coaching style and try to implement a completely new plan mid off season it's just an impossible task to ask of anybody. So I think it'll be good for both parties. I think it'll be good for Mississippi State, and I think it'll be really good for Zach Arnett. And nothing's going to be taken against Zach Arnett for this season. Again, like I said, nearly impossible to do something like to actually just have a functioning season. But I did think I saw some Instagram rumors, so you got to take it with a grain of salt, just fans talking, but pointing out maybe pulling Dan Mullen back. I kind of like the sound of that. I don't know. But you're going to have to excuse me for a second. I'm going to take a drink break because I don't have a little idle time with Josh not being here. So, that's the stuff. Anyways, moving on. Next game, Georgia versus Ole Miss, 52-17. Georgia's back to being scary again. And I know we just passed up on Halloween. Probably would have been great timing if we kind of did this during Halloween time, but they are spooky scary. They are really, really, really good. I thought that the three-peat was going to be a little bit too hard, especially at the beginning of the year. Carson Beck wasn't really looking good as a passer, and I know that's probably something that you really have to have, especially come playoff time. But the three-peat looks real. It kind of feels real. You know, like I said earlier, Oregon and Georgia are kind of looking like the best teams right now. I mean, aside from Michigan, but Michigan's dealing with a lot of other adversity, which might actually help them out. But they look good. My big thing with Georgia is that they were kind of winning ugly early, but now it's just Carson Beck's winning ugly now because he's just an ugly dude. He's just an ugly dude. I'm sorry. But the man can play some fucking hell of football and will probably make some millions in the NFL. And then he can probably just do plastic surgery and fix up his face. But Anyways, but yeah, he had a good game, 18 to 25, 306 yards, 2 touchdowns and interceptions, also added 30 yards on the ground. Yeah, they are looking good, and the defense keeps being the stifling defense that Kirby Smart and, his predecessor Nick Saban has implemented time and time again. Jackson Dart only had 112 yards passing yards. That's pretty crazy. But yeah, Georgia beats up on Ole Miss, and I can't help but to think right now, given the circumstances, is Kiffin going to A&M? I just don't know. I mean, it feels like a petty thing that Lane Kiffin would do. And I feel like Lane Kiffin has an expiration date with any places that he goes. He just kind of either outperforms his welcome, or he just gets bored. I don't know. Maybe not outperform his welcome, but overstays his welcome. You know what I'm saying. So I'm going to throw that little butterfly out into the wind and see how far it flies. Or if, some fucking blizzard. What is it? Camadil? I don't know what kind of lizard it is. Just say it in the comments. But anyways, Georgia 52, Ole Miss 17. Moving on, Washington versus Utah, 35-28. Fantastic game, by the way. Don't know if anybody got the but if you got a chance to actually watch this, very, very entertaining game. Regardless that the fact that Utah is still playing with their second, third string quarterback, really, really feisty team. I honestly would. Nick Saban's probably going to win Coach of the Year because just he's doing a hell of a job. Kalen DeBoer could probably win it at Washington. That's just because of the job he's doing. But Kyle Whittingham needs to get some credit for the job that he's doing because his team is half depleted and he is in games. He's in every game. If he didn't have like back-to-back interceptions towards the end, or no, not back-to-back interceptions, but one interception to seal it off at the end, I mean, they were one drive away from actually tying this game up. The other things I had on this one, obviously the big highlight or low light, if you want to call it, of this game was the interception by Afonso Tupatala. One of those names. Alfonso the Bozo move, fumbling it right before the end zone. And I can't tell you, how many times on this show, he's listening to the show. How many times on this show do we say, just Forrest Gump the shit? Just run past the end zone, run to the locker room, run to your mom watching it at TV at home with the football. Just hold the celebration. It's unbelievable. It's baffling. It frustrates me to death because, one thing I would love to do, obviously didn't have the athletic ability to do, but I would have loved to play college football, and seeing people do stuff like boneheaded stuff like that, I'm like, I know I wouldn't have done that. I would have at least not done that. Or maybe I would have, who knows? Drunk Joe's a whole nother animal. Anyways, but boneheaded move, fumbling it right before the end zone. We see this time and time again. Just run through the end zone. Just Forrest Gump it. Use it as your celebration. I don't know. It'd probably work. But I will say he did get bailed out by his defense. They had a defensive safety the ensuing drive for Utah. So luckily for him, he didn't get completely chewed out by his coach. But probably pretty bad. Anyways, I'm really curious to see what Utah's returning next year. I'd have to do a little bit of deep dive research. I don't know if Cameron Rising's coming back. I'd have to imagine if he wasn't redshirted, they probably would redshirt him. They had the starting tight end. If I don't know when or if he was coming back, but I'd love to see what they're going to do or what they have returning because they could be a dangerous team next year. So that's all I have for that game. Moving on, Missouri 36, Tennessee 7. if Eli Drinkwitz is not the hottest coaching name this offseason, college football is broken. Like if I'm Texas A&M and I'm their boosters, I'm making a hard push on him. I don't care if he's, at a SEC school. I'm making a very hard push at him. It would be stupid not to. Also, at the same time, I also don't think he would be a complete fit because I kind of do agree with some of the commentators and analysts talking about how you really need a Texas guy. But Eli needs to be in some names. He needs to be in some names for some big-time head coaching jobs. Otherwise, something's wrong. So, but going back to the game, walk-on Cody Schrader, absolute dog. Heart, I meant to say. Probably better. He's an absolute heart. I mean, that's maybe like a kind of a childhood and kind of a lame way to say it, but he's literally the heart and soul of this team. When you have a walk-on that comes on and becomes a star of your team, it becomes a heart of your team. I mean, we've seen it before at LSU with Josh Williams. Josh Williams came on as a walk-on, made his way to as the starter, and was really the heart and soul of the team last year. And that's kind of the way you're seeing it with this year with Cody Schrader. He's been fantastic. He had 35 carries, 205 yards, and touchdown. He also added on 5 receptions and 116 yards, over 300 yards total combined. You watch these guys, and like I said, they're just they play with so much heart and soul. But you do watch them, and they're not like overly impressive. When you're watching them, it's not like some sort of Saquon Barkley move that you just ridiculous, or like Bijan Robinson just to catch it behind the back. They're not usually doing like the athletic things, like the overly athletic things. It's more of the fact they just do like everything right. The walk-ons always just do everything right. If they have a starting job, they're just doing all the little things right. It's just everything they do right. And it's like, you watch him and it's like, oh, here he goes. He doesn't look so impressive, but it's like, oh, he found the hole. He found the hole. Or he's a solid possession receiver. He caught the pass. He doesn't drop. It's just like they always do those little things right. But moving on to Tennessee, Joe Milton doesn't look like he was as advertised, which, I mean, he was only really advertised as like a specimen, which he is, an athletic specimen. But as far as, maybe just that it factor of, to help him win games, just hasn't really seen it. I do think he probably will still be drafted just strictly on his arm alone, because that thing is just ginormous. He just can chuck it across the field, and the NFL is they're going to drool over that, because there's tighter gaps that you have to get it into in the NFL, and I can see him. I can't really see him being a starter in the league, but I can see him being like a long-term backup, and a pretty good backup, because he'll have the talent to actually make some of those throws that, a lot of QBs can't make. But yeah, Tennessee is basically with this game, basically writing it off. They are looking forward to next year when they have Nico Iamaleava. I don't know, but that hype is real. Tennessee fans are definitely looking forward to him. One of the top quarterbacks. He's a freshman this year. One of the top quarterbacks last year's class. He should be good. All right, moving on. Little drink break. All right, Michigan versus Penn State. Big game in the weekend. Top 10 matchup. Another top 10 matchup. Was Penn State top 10? I don't know. I don't have the numbers written down. Anyways, Michigan 24-15, Penn State 15. James Franklin, you can't stop. You can't continue to lose the big game. I mean, this was a matchup that you had to win. It was at Penn State. Another top 10 matchup. You've got to get one of these. And, I mean, Penn State's going to be left with a decision if this is going to be a continued case, Do you continue on with these 9-game, 10-game win seasons with James Franklin with the hopes of maybe just kind of breaking through one of these times, or do you move on? Time will tell what they want to do, and I don't think this is I don't think that's an easy choice either, because we've seen time and time again of like teams that had consistent coaches that decided to move on with them and didn't get better. Now, obviously, Georgia's the case where they actually did have that same scenario with Mark Richt. Mark Richt really never won anything at Georgia. Then they moved on with him and got Kirby Smart. I think that's the situation you have to do with Penn State. You got to stay with James Franklin until you find an excellent coach that's going to come in and be able to improve your program. You just kind of wait around until you find that perfect opportunity, that opportune moment, as Captain Jack Sparrow would say. But yeah, no, this was also going on to Penn State. Drew Allar, 11 to 22, 70 yards. He's got some growing up to do. But actually, that leads me to our passing stats for this game. I got very confused if this was maybe an Iowa game, because J.J. McCarthy was 7 of 8, 60 yards, and Drew Allar was 10 of 22, 70 yards. So there was not a 100-yard thrower for this game. Basically, 130 yards total and 1 touchdown combined. Like, that's that's an Iowa game if I've seen it, right? Anyways, maybe I'm just talking to myself. Quite frankly, I am talking to myself. But the other kind of highlights that came out of this game, Blake Corum got busted up and blood everywhere. He basically left it all on the field. No holding back. They played, obviously, for Jim Harbaugh, who was suspended for this game. Sharon Moore, the offense coordinator and line coach, had a very emotional press conference. My biggest thing was like, I was watching it live, So it just kind of came out of nowhere. I didn't even see the highlights on it. I mean, I saw the highlights later on, but I actually saw it live first. And I just felt like it kind of came out of nowhere. It reminded me of like an Always Sunny episode whenever Dennis was just crying on command, and like before he even got to his point. I don't know. I just kind of felt like that was the situation with Sharon Moore. Like, look, I get it. Like, I get it's an emotional time. Like emotions are running high because of the situation going on and the kind of controversy behind it, but hey, you still got quite a few more games. This wasn't like a national championship game. It was a big game, don't get me wrong, but to completely lose your words, I mean, the guy left. The guy left during mid press conference interview. I don't know. And look, I do applaud the emotion and the passion that he brought, but I don't know. I thought it was a little off-putting. Anyways, all right, moving on. We like to talk about Tulane, obviously. If you've been listening to the show, small-town school around Louisiana, been doing really, really good. So Tulane actually beat up on Tulsa 24 to 22. I wouldn't say actually beat up. Very close game. I think Tulane's kind of playing with a little fire here with all these close matchups. And like I said earlier to the school in the show, this was a game where Tulsa actually had a failed 2-point conversion, which actually led to this victory. So this was one instance. There's a couple other instances too that were failed 2-point conversions. I don't even know if maybe did I get to one or pass it up? No, I didn't pass one up. Yeah. So yeah, that was the first of our games. That was a failed 2-point conversion. Little Mekhi Hughes tracker. He had the 6th straight game with 100 yards. I actually took a look to see the rushing leaders in the college football. Kind of wanted to see if he was in the top 10. He's 16, but Mekhi Hughes was actually not the starter and actually did get hurt at the beginning of the season. So he honestly is. I would love to see the stats from the past 6 weeks when he's been 6 straight over games over 100 yards to see what his rankings is during that span. But yeah, absolutely beast. Tulane wins this 24 to 22 against Tulsa. Probably should win it a little bit more, bigger spread. Stop giving their fans a heart attack. But anyways, all right. The other game we wanted to talk about is Oklahoma State and UCF. UCF beats Oklahoma State 45-3. Yeah, I will repeat that because I know you thought that was pretty crazy. UCF beat Oklahoma State 45-3. I keep botching this. So it seems like Oklahoma State has two options this year. One, they either get up and win big games like Oklahoma and Kansas, or two, they get blown out by teams they have no business of doing that to Oklahoma State. South Alabama, go Jags, South in your mouth, and UCF in this game. Basically the strategy is hold Ollie Gordon to 12 carries and 25 yards. If you can hold Ollie Gordon the third to that amount, you're going to probably beat Oklahoma State. All right, moving on. That was the last of what we wanted to take care of for college football, so we'll move on to NFL Week 10. And this is a little bit of a somber start, obviously, when the Saints lose. But I hate to say it, but the Vikings just have our number. How? I know how. It's probably still revenge from whenever we actually beat them in the playoff game to go to the Super Bowl when they had Brett Favre, and that was basically their last chance, yada, 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 whine, cry me a river. But yeah, the Vikings have definitely had the Saints number ever since then. They had the Minnesota Miracle with Stephon Diggs, and I don't like to really bring up, and then they just kind of beaten us throughout the years. So I'm really tired of it. And you know what? I'm speaking on behalf of Josh. I feel like Josh would just go on a rant right now about something like that. But the Vikings just have our number. I can't understand why our defense is really, really good, but at the same time makes Josh Dobbs look like an absolute, Pastosaurus or Pastronaut. He was 23-34, 268 yards and a touchdown. That maybe wasn't the craziest of stats, but at the same time, really helped him to a victory here. We did get to see Jameis Winston. Unfortunately, that was due to a injury to Derek Carr. But Jameis Winston came in famous Jameis fashion. 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Basically about 50% completion and 112 yards. So throws it down the field, but also will give it away and score some touchdowns. Very confusing, but that's the Jameis way. This game was definitely not a good game as far as from an injury standpoint. We had Marcus Lattimore, Michael Thomas, Derek Carr all basically got out with an injury during this game, so you can kind of account that to that. But I will say, that is the con. The pro to look at it, we have a bye week next week. So probably the bye week couldn't come at a more perfect time. Hopefully that we can have some of those guys get rested and they can come back for the next game. But I don't know what to do with the Saints team. Obviously Vikings just have our number, so that's just kind of pathetic. But at the same time, they go into this frustrating, stagnant offense type of game where, everything's predictable. And the defense just, gives up whatever they want to a backup QB who probably still doesn't even know the full play. Well, actually, he probably does by now. I know it's only been 1 week, but the man's an astrophysicist, I think. Something like that. Something with NASA. Actually, fun story. Have a buddy of mine, went to high school with. He actually works at NASA, And during the summer, when Josh Dobbs actually had his internship with NASA, he was working with my high school friend. So shout out to him for, getting to meet Josh Dobbs and having a fun time. But all right, anyways, let's move on from this game. Definitely want to move on from this game. Move far, far away from it. Go into the Cardinals. Cardinals versus the Falcons, because we love, on a brighter note, to see the Falcons lose. Being a diehard Saints fan, who dat? So the Cardinals beat the Falcons 25-23, and Kyler Murray's back. Kyler Murray is back. And it's surprising to see that he's back on the same weekend that Modern Warfare 3 got released. But maybe that's what they need to do. They just need to hold Kyler Murray out for the first half of the season. And then regardless of when the new Call of Duty gets released, he's going to be so deprived of football that he's going to really want to play and really do well out there. Because most of the time he actually plays really, really well at the beginning of the season, and then when Call of Duty comes out, he doesn't play as well. Obviously, maybe just gets bored of football and just wants to play, video games. I don't know. But, wasn't distracted this time around. Kind of got ahead of vintage Kyler Murray. There was basically towards the end of the game, to the last game-winning drive, he had, I believe it was third down, might have been a second down play where he had vintage Kyler Murray just running around, holding the football with like a loaf of bread and looking like a little toddler, running around among the big guys, but squirming his way for a first down. Pretty impressive. Good to see him in full swing. This one had another failed 2-point conversion by the Falcons. So keeping track, that's number 2. And unfortunately for the Falcons, Heineke went out with an injury. I don't know how much it makes too much of a difference. I mean, Desmond Ridder came back in. I haven't seen too much of a difference with Ridder and Heineke. I feel like Arthur Smith has kind of tamed Taylor Heineke down. So they almost look duplicate now, Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke. I don't know. I felt like he did a lot more Brett Favre things when he was at the Washington Commanders. Whereas now, he just seems a little bit more tame. I don't know. Just my opinion. Just like the show. Why don't you come back for more? Anyways, I'm going to stop being stupid. All right. Well, Cardinals beat the Falcons 25-23. Sip break. All right. Moving on to one of the better games this week. Texans versus the Bengals. So the Texans got the best of the Bengals, 30-27. The big talk, obviously, here is C.J. Stroud. Let's address the elephant in the room, per se. So C.J. Stroud, and rightfully so, is getting a lot of hype. But I'm gonna zig while everybody zags on this and say that I'm a C.J. Stroud cautionary. Is that a word? Probably not. But you know what? This is an unprofessional show, so we're going to make unprofessional words. Cautionary. And in that sense, since I made up a word, I'm probably going to have to describe it to you, is that I'm not going to buy into the to the MVP talk right now. I'm not. I'm sorry. Like, yes, he is the leading passer in the league. I get it. But I haven't seen enough of this on a consistent basis. And you can yell at me all you want and say, oh, yeah, we've seen this for 2 straight weeks. Also, let me remind you that C.J. Stroud was written off as dead in the preseason. I mean, am I wrong? Like, during the preseason, like, everybody hated C.J. Stroud. Like, oh, he just can't read the defense as well. His IQ score, or whatever the Wonderlic test was, right. He doesn't have it up there. A lot of people wrote him off. And, I mean, he did have that performance. Now, granted, obviously, people can grow, people can progress. They can actually, once they learn a system, they are actually a little bit better. So, I'm not saying, like I said, I'm being a cautionary guy on this because I'm not saying that he can't be the MVP right now. But let's slow down the hype train real quick. Let's just kind of like go take it week by week and say, hey, yes, he's doing really, really well. But also, defenses will figure him out and how he adapts to that. Because, and like, people might be like, oh, no, he's going to, he can get past all defense. Trust me, NFL defenses will figure you out. They'll figure out exactly what you do on a consistent basis. These guys are pros. There's a reason why, too, that there's not as many prevalent elite quarterbacks in the league as there was, let's say, early 2000s, maybe mid 2000s, or early 2010s, is that defenses are very, very good, and they've been adapting with their personnel, type of players that they're drafting, and their schemes. They will pick up on everything that a quarterback does and their tendencies. So my big thing is I'm not saying I know CJ Stroud's got the talent. We talked about how he had the most talented arm in the NFL Combine. If you wanted to go check and see, we have recorded podcasts stating this. I know he's a talent, and I know he's doing really, really hot, and I know he can still do really, really hot, but I want to see how he makes those adjustments. I want to see how he makes those adjustments when the defenses start making adjustments on him. And then that'll be the telltale sign. I think the excuse a lot of people will give him right now is that he doesn't have wide receivers. And I kind of have to agree right now. I don't think he actually does have wide receivers. Name me a person who actually drafted or knew about Nico Collins, Tank Dell, and Noah Brown. Obviously, Noah Brown was from the Cowboys last year. He had maybe some good games, but I don't guarantee you most people didn't know he was at the Houston Texans. Tank Dell, yeah, obviously he was maybe just like a good athletic person coming out. He has the product of being a rookie. Everybody knows about rookies and tries to get the inside information on as far as from a fantasy perspective. But no one knew that Nico Collins was going to be the number one wide receiver on this team and really do what he was doing this year. He's not like he's like a number one draft pick or in the first round draft pick. He's a beneficiary of what CJ Stroud's been doing lately. So, anyways, couple of different things. Yes, another reason why I'm a cautionary person for CJ Stroud right now is that third and 2 was a bad interception. Basically, could have sealed the game by just either completing the pass or he could have made it a lot harder for the Bengals to come back if he had to punt the ball and they had to drive the entire field. So, one little bit bad mistake. Then the other thing is Boyd, if Boyd doesn't drop that touchdown, CJ Stroud's going to have to come back for a game-winning touchdown. So, like I said, I know the hype is real. I know the hype is somewhat warranted. Just be cautious about it. Just my opinion. All right, moving on to the next game. Browns 33, Ravens 31, and what was such a surprising game. I mean, not really. It's an AFC North matchup. Like anything can happen. That's the AFC North. If you looked up in the dictionary, that's what the description would be. That's what the definition would be. Anything can happen. I'm sorry. I feel bad for the Browns fans. I mean, you get yourself a big emotional victory like this, and I kind of refer this exactly to like South Park, the episode of South Park when I feel like it's either Kyle or Stan was, no, it was Stan. Stan was depositing his money into the bank, and the teller is talking about everything that he's doing with his money and that he was going to invest it, and then he goes, and it's gone. And just, stands like, what? And the teller's like, oh yeah, no, your money's gone. That's kind of what I felt like with this. It was like Deshaun Watson is back to his old self ever since the greatest game that since being of Browns, and he's gone for the season. I feel bad, but that's exactly what it seemed like. It was just 20 to 34, 213 yards, touchdown, maybe and an interception, but and he's gone. So it really kind of sucks there. I feel bad for Browns. They'll have to rely on DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, for the rest of the year. Where's the Josh Dobbs when you need him? That's a knee slapper. Anyways, other parts of this game, Kyle Hamilton had a Honey Badger pick 6 on this one. That was quite incredible. And if you don't know what I'm referring to, Tyrann Mathieu had a pick 6 against West Virginia where he basically jumped a screen pass, tipped it with one hand, caught it, and then ran it in for a touchdown. That was the exact same thing Kyle Hamilton did, which is crazy because we all knew Kyle Hamilton was one of the best safeties coming out of his draft class, and then he got drafted to Baltimore, which is like the rich getting richer. Whatever. Frustrating. I know. Other highlights of this game, Jerome Ford had a good game. I can't help myself but to think that Keaton Mitchell, Jerome Ford, and Devon Achane are like basically replicas of each other. They're basically clones. They're all just speedsters. Just straight line speed. Chris Johnson would be proud. Like just up and down, one cut sprinters. But yeah, got a little dicey, especially whenever Browns had a chance to tie it. The PAT was no good for the Browns, but Dustin Hopkins does actually. Is it Dustin Hopkins? I feel like that's the actor's name. Oh, Dustin Hoffman. Never mind. Anyways, Dustin Hopkins redeems himself with a 40-yard game winner that that goes in, wins the game. Nice win for the Browns there. But the other thing we want to highlight up on is the primetime matchups were kind of shitty. The Panthers and the Bears. Bears beat the Panthers 16-13. That was a terrible game. Also, the Jets versus the Raiders 16-12. Almost identical games. That was a terrible game on Sunday night. But I will say the Broncos and the Bills made it up in a way. The Bills kind of just shot themselves. I mean, you can't give up that pass interference, which was close. I will say it was close. It leaves it up for debate on the internet and on social media platforms, but it was close. He was kind of turning around. And then Will Lutz actually does miss the field goal, but they had 12 men on the field. Just crazy stuff. Basically, Bill's giving Broncos the game. But let's give it up to the Broncos. The Broncos are kind of coming back a little bit. I will say, most people wrote the Broncos off for dead whenever they gave up 70 points. And, hey, they're hanging in there now. So, fuck you, Sean Payton. Anyways, all right, do you have anything else? No? Okay. All right, moving on. We want to talk about a little bit of the NBA. Obviously, is kind of in full swing right now. We're in the in-season tournament phase, which I don't really know what's going on. I don't think anybody else knows what's going on, except the fact that they're painting the courts whatever the fuck colors that they want, which is really weird. I don't like it. I can do jerseys. Jerseys are fine. You switch it up a little bit. It's not it's not a permanent solution and stuff like that, but the courts, they're weirding me out. It's hard to keep track, especially if the home team is the same color as the floor. It's almost like a Boise State, but for every single game. I don't like it. I don't like it very much. But hey, you know what? If it gets the majority of the people that do like it, I mean, I get it. It is change. It is something that's changing. It makes it look a little bit different. It's not like a permanent thing. Maybe like kind of like jerseys, like they're just going to do it like as a temporary thing. But I don't know. Not a big fan of it. Again, don't really know what's going on in the in-season tournament, but I do know that they're playing some basketball, and I do know that the Clippers are not playing good basketball right now, ever since trading for Harden. They are still currently on a 6-game losing streak. I don't think that's entirely on James Harden right now. But I will say Tyronn Lue probably did put it in the best way and probably in the most professional coach way he could, but basically said that James Harden isn't meshing because he doesn't fit the small ball lineup, which Tyronn Lue loves small ball. He loves small ball. I mean, he was a point guard. He's a little bit on the smaller scale of stuff. And anytime you've seen him coach Cavaliers, Clippers, he's loved small ball. So, and he said Harden doesn't fit the small ball format due to his, basically what he said, overweight and the fact that he's not in shape. So that was kind of funny. That was really, really funny to kind of laugh at because it's very true. And that's the thing with this team. It's like you actually kind of need one of these guys, James Harden, Russell Westbrook, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard. You need one of these guys to come off the bench. You need somebody else that's a glue guy. You don't need all those egos. I'm preaching to the crowd. I get it. I'm preaching to the crowd. Everybody knows this. But you've got to have one of them come off the bench. And my choice is probably James Harden. But I know during a crucial time, there was a viral video that came out of Russell Westbrook shrugging his shoulders after he was being called to sub out towards the end of the game, which is typically when you have your best players, then if they're not fouled out. So it's going to be really, 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 really fun to watch the Clippers just deteriorate. Or maybe Tyronn Lue just comes out, goes coach of the year mode, and gets them all to play with each other. I don't believe in him, but maybe he proves me wrong. Who knows? All right, other things that's going on the James Harden track, Philly seems to be doing just fine without him. They are 8-2, sitting tied with Boston as far as 2 losses, only having 2 losses go in the East. So, yeah, Tyrese Maxey, baller. Obviously, smart choice to get him more touches and, trade out James Harden. Worked out really, really well. I feel like that three, Tyrese Maxey, Tobias Harris, and of course Joel Embiid, really good trio. I think you can ride off of that for quite some time. So, and especially the way that Maxey's been improving his game, I roll the dice with that all year long. Hopefully no one gets injured from it. They're exciting to watch. Our Pelicans, they're about 5-4 right now. Don't look bad. They can get up for some big games. They just beat Dallas last game. So obviously Dallas is really good top tier team in the league. So like when we put it all together, we can really, really make some noise. I mean, we got obviously CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson. I do like a lot of kind of the couple of pieces that are coming together. Herb Jones is still that glue guy for us, which is what you need. You definitely need a glue guy and somebody who can play some outstanding defense. I really love our draft pick, Jordan Hawkins. I loved him whenever we drafted him. Played phenomenal ball at UConn, won the national championship, of course, and is just a straight-up shooter. Definitely what we needed. Big time what we needed, probably for like the last 10 years, if I'm being real honest with you. But straight baller. Love what he's bringing to the team. I think he can bring some more of that aspect. Dyson Daniels is doing really good. I'm really wondering how his mom's doing. But yeah, other than that, oh, last NBA tidbit I did want to touch up on. We did have a nice, good WWE fight again with the Timberwolves and the Warriors. Um, that was really really fun. Where Draymond Green put Rudy Gobert in a headlock. If you haven't seen that, it is hysterical. They're definitely bringing the '90s back. They're definitely bringing the '90s back. Maybe if that's the thing, they're bringing '90s back in fashion and also on the basketball court. It could be. I don't know. Maybe I cracked the code. Who knows? But yeah, that was really really funny. The thing I have to say about this is this: we've already seen a couple of instances with Draymond Green acting up, lashing out. Probably is a better term. Getting in fights. If Draymond Green, or better yet, if the WWE doesn't reach out to Draymond Green and sign him for a contract, and we don't see like him versus a Logan Paul situation on WWE, I think it's a huge missed opportunity for the WWE. I mean, just imagine like throwing Draymond Green out there. I mean, dude, he would love the solos. He would love the monologues with, talking into the mic to the crowd in between like fights or whatever they do, the planned stage WWE stuff. I can see Draymond thriving in something like that. And we all know he loves to fight. He'd be right at home. I don't know. Look, just pitching ideas, just my opinion. But, alrighty. Well, I think that wraps up everything that we wanted to talk about. I know I've been saying we, me and Josh. Josh still did implement a lot of the background game planning that we do onto the show and the topics that we discuss. So, we is very appropriate for this, but I'm glad you put up with me for an entire hour. Can't believe I actually did talk for an entire hour. But, yeah. Appreciate you listening in on the show. Keep listening. Hopefully we'll have Josh back by next week. Odds are I'm probably going to bet that he will be back. But y'all have a good night. Love y'all. Later.